All right, guys, thank you so much for coming on to my channel. Today, I have a very amazing guest, Biohacking Chick on Instagram. I'll let her introduce her to you, but she's been carnivore for, I think, 2 years now. And she has a really amazing healing story, healing journey. She and I also have the whole ex-vegan thing in common, so I'm sure she'll touch on that. But welcome to my channel. Go ahead, introduce everybody to you.
Hi guys, well I'm Sylvia. I go by the name Sylvia. Everybody on Instagram knows me as Biohacking Chick,
Yeah.
which I personally don't like the name biohacking, but I just stuck with it throughout the years. So whatever it is, what it is. Yeah, I've been carnivore for 2 years now, and I went through the whole vegan journey. Then I went fruitarian, and for those who don't know what fruitarian is, it's just basically eating fruits, nothing else. Maybe some green vegetables like salads or spinach, stuff like that. But it was mostly fruit-based diet, and in between everything, I think I've tried every single diet, and it probably started when I first moved to US when I was 13. I was born and raised in Poland. So in Poland, I was growing up on a small farm where we grew everything ourselves. And coming to US, I just started noticing I was getting very tired, unhealthy, sleepy, and I was putting on a lot of weight too. And granted, I was 13, I was still, my hormones were going crazy at the same time. But the fact that I was putting on so much weight bothered me because, throughout um, all the uh, all the years that I've been growing up in Poland, I never had weight issue. So
Mm.
seeing that, it kind of like got me into looking into, different diets and then exercising more. Probably exercise was like the first thing I looked into. And then it was diets. So I started experimenting with diets from very young age, which is not good. If you start dieting at that age, you're definitely gonna, mess up your hormones and do a bunch of other damage to your body. But that's what happened to me, and in a way, I am grateful for that. And when I did go vegan, it wasn't necessarily for weight, to fix my weight. It was because I watched like all these documentaries talking about how animals are mistreated, and then I got into that. From being vegan, I went raw vegan, and that probably lasted 3 years. And when I went vegan, the thing is like I never went from like standard American diet into vegan diet. And that's why I probably haven't noticed like the benefits that everybody talks about when they switch to vegan diet. Because my diet prior to that was very clean. I was eating just fruits, vegetables, nothing processed. I was already avoiding dairy, grains and beans, all that stuff. Like I already knew that that didn't work for me. So I was just eating fruits, vegetables, chicken breast. I didn't eat any grains, so rice was out of the question. Um, and yeah, like I said, and going vegan didn't really make me feel any better.
Mm.
So, but I kind of was suffering through it, thinking like I'm doing this great thing for the planet, I'm gonna save the animals and all that stuff. And I didn't know any better, because that's all there was, all that vegan documentaries that were so, not true.
Yeah.
Now we know that thanks to mainly to vegan community, not vegan, carnivore community, we're learning so much more. And we're learning how vegan diet can actually damage the planet and human body in the first place. So yeah, then from that, when I went fruitarian, I started developing a lot of mental issues like severe depression. From there, I developed binge eating disorder, and after that, I developed bulimia, which I don't really talk about at all, pretty much like on the podcast that I've been on. I only talked about like the binge eating. I haven't talked about bulimia because it was like I still feel like people look down on people who go through it, but yeah, it happened to me and it lasted 6 years and I was miserable. I was miserable and I didn't know how to stop. And then somehow I found Dr. Jack Cruz, who at that time was a huge proponent of leptin reset. And essentially what it entitled was cold plunges, and then the diet was very heavy on animal foods and very little carbs. So he would recommend like, oh, eat, like 5 spears of asparagus or something like that. I'm like, well, I don't really care for vegetables, so I was just eating meat. And after suffering for 6 years with bulimia and just going through, like binges and purges on daily basis, sometimes it was like multiple times a day. And when I switched to the animal-based diet and tried his protocol, all of a sudden, like after 2 weeks, it just resolved. Like I did not have the urges to overeat. And when I did eat, like I did not have the urge to purge afterwards. And that got me thinking, like, oh my God, what's going on? Like it almost felt like my brain got fixed. I was like, even throughout the day, there was no ups and downs, nothing. I was just happy, and before that, I went to a psychiatrist and they wanted me to go to a facility where you basically spend, I think it was like 3 months with a bunch of other people who have similar issues, and you go talk to people. And I thought to myself, I'm like, this is not going to help me. Like, this is something going on with my brain, because I literally felt like something was taking over my brain. Um, and then I just had no control. I was just like paralyzed, and something was just making me eat all that food. And then to compensate for it, I was purging, And at first, it started. There are different kinds of purges when you can purge through exercise, or you can physically make yourself throw up. So I went through both kinds. And I went through a period when I looked anorexic, and then I went through a period when I looked normal. And nobody knew at that time what was going on with me. They thought I was fine when I was at normal weight, but that was probably the time when I was struggling the most. And the hardest part was, talking to the people that are closest to you about this issue. And I know it's hard for the family as well to reach out, even though they notice that something's wrong with you and talk to you about that, because they don't want to offend you in a way. So that was a very, very hard time for me. And I probably wasted the best years of my life. But yeah, again, it's just like, it's crazy how, plant-based diet is so glorified, but it's so damaging. It can
Yeah.
damage not just you physically, but mentally so bad. And then again, animal foods are so nourishing. And it's just crazy what's going on out there right now with the whole vegan movement. And that's kind of like what all of us are trying to, prevent from happening, because we don't want meat to be tax on top of tax, and then have meatless Mondays, and then it's gonna turn into meatless weeks where we're not allowed to eat meat. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my kind of story. And yeah, I've been carnivore now for 2 years basically. So, and it's been great.
I think that's so brave of you to talk about the bulimia. I mean, that's something I've struggled with as well. And, it comes up in many forms. Sometimes it's not always the physical purge, but there can be exercise or fasting, to make up for what you eat. Like it just rears its head in so many different ways. And so I commend you for being honest about that. And I think that when we can kind of share these things about ourselves, that it helps other people who are struggling to kind of take the shame off of it. And do you think, I just listened to this whole podcast with Dr. Daniel Amen, which I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Amen, and he was talking about depression, anxiety, and the vitamin deficiencies in the brain, of course, B12, which we know about, but also major deficiencies in those omega-3s, that's a big problem for people as well, is that and the vitamins that are supporting their brain you can get those through animal foods. And so, it makes me think like all the binging and purging and all that disordered stuff, was it just from your brain not having those supportive nutrients, like.
I honestly truly believe so, but I think there's more to it
Yeah, there's an
because
emotional component too, for sure.
yeah, I was supplementing with a lot of stuff, like when I was on the vegan diet, and I still didn't get that mental, like, I don't know, like this calmness, like, and I was into yoga the whole time, and I thought like, oh my God, I'm gonna become like this peaceful monk, like
Right.
if I do yoga, I'm gonna be vegan. But I was so angry. I remember going through class, and I was so hungry, and I just wanted the teacher to end the class because I was literally so hangry that I just, I'm like, just finish this. And on carnivore diet, it's totally different.
Yeah.
It's just this even mood, happy, even throughout my, when I get my period, it's still normal. Like I don't, there are some physical, like changes, like water retention that I still
Yeah.
deal with. But other than that, like, my mood, the same, there's no
Yeah.
craziness. So, but like I was saying, during vegan diet, I was supplementing with the B12 with essential amino acids. I was supplementing with all the B12. I was taking actually shots for B12.
Wow. Did you
Um,
ever test your blood work to see if it was actually being absorbed?
Um, at that time I didn't because I was in college, so I did not
Oh,
have
yeah.
like all my money was basically going into like buying my own food because my parents like wouldn't support that. And then the supplements. I
Yeah,
spent so much money on supplements, it was crazy.
I get it.
Um, so and I still didn't feel the same way as I'm feeling just through eating meat. And on the carnivore diet, I'm only taking magnesium sometimes when I feel like I need it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've been playing around with different supplements just to see if it does anything, if it helps with anything. But I just don't supplement with anything else aside from just some magnesium and electrolytes when I do, sweat a lot. And living here in Arizona,
Yeah. So,
summertime, you just sit and you sweat. So,
yeah.
so, so I think there's more to animal-based diet than just and brain health than the minerals, the electrolytes, and the vitamins. There's something else. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is that in the meat you get the full package altogether. It's not just single nutrient that your body's taking in, and perhaps it needs something else in order to absorb it better. So I don't know. Like I think just meat, is like a full package of everything your body needs, and it nourishes your body and your mind as well.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we get kind of cocky around like nutritional science and things like that. And it was funny, I was talking with Vanessa, ketogenic girl, and she just went through the whole science, learning about nutrition and biochemistry. And she was like, yeah, we don't know so many things. That she was getting to places, and she was like, okay, I was waiting for the science and the explanation. And basically they're like, we don't really know. So a lot of stuff that's being put out there is, especially there's a big plant-based propaganda going on. We see it everywhere. People that they think they know the answer based on some science that was done on rats, or it's just not solid stuff. And I think that meat is one of those things we don't necessarily know everything about how it nourishes the body and the mind. Like we can surmise certain things, but we're still learning, we're still babies in learning what works best for the human body food wise, which is crazy because we've been around for you know, for a little bit, but
Yeah.
we're still learning so many things. And, you know,
Yeah, and even, like all the tests that we have right now, they're all based on people who haven't been ketogenic,
yeah,
so you get lab results back, and then you have a number that you're trying to reach, but that number might be somebody who's been eating a lot of carbs and
yeah,
not necessarily very healthy, but that person or that group of people
yeah,
is considered healthy, in America.
yeah,
So it's like it's hard to even tell with the testing because I've been through thyroid issues when I had Hashimoto's, and I have a lot of my own clients coming to me and asking me, can you heal thyroid issues like Hashimoto's on carnivore diet? For me, yes, I healed that. I did do lab work, and the numbers weren't super high. They barely fit like the range that the doctors give you,
yeah,
but at the same time, I never felt better.
right,
So right now I'm working with a functional doctor who does all the lab work for me and tests for everything, and he understands that people who are on ketogenic type diets, they will have different numbers, and for thyroid, even though your T3 might be low, but it just might mean that you utilize it better. Your body it uses it better, so it's not floating in the body. So there's so many little things that we still need to understand with the testing, with everything else, with the diet, nutrition, and if there's enough of everything that we need and meat alone. Um, I do think so, just based on how I've been feeling for the past 2 years. There's been some experiments that I've done with dairy that didn't always make me feel good. And just the recent one that I'm still kind of recovering from, like my face is still swollen from dairy that
yeah. I
that
love
I
that you put that out there for people though, because I think people get super triggered when you say, oh, I had this reaction to dairy or that reaction. But what I love about your page and like what you've been doing in the community is you're just honest about how
yeah,
different things
exactly.
interact with you. You know, it's,
Yeah, and I'm not I'm never telling people you should stop eating this. I'm just saying like this is what happened to me.
mhm,
And when I made one post about dairy that it's addictive, that there's like no place for dairy, at least in my life, because I know how it negatively affects my body. And I just had like a bunch of comments just
oh, it's
saying,
crazy.
"Oh, try raw dairy,
Strawberry.
A2 dairy, or
Nope.
goat." I'm like,
Same.
guys, like
Same.
trust me, I've been there, I've tried that. I grew up on raw dairy. We had our own cows. I grew up on that stuff. Like when I was little, it never bothered me. Now, yeah, granted, I went through severe eating disorder and my gut is still pretty messed up.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to heal that. Um, but it just doesn't agree with me. And I see other people that it's the same for them, but they're kind of in denial because, again, I do think that dairy is addictive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm just experimenting.
Yeah.
We all are. And I
Yeah.
really encourage people that everybody should try it for themselves, see how they feel, test out carnivore diet. If carnivore diet is not for them, throw in some vegetables that are not high in anti-nutrients and see how that goes. There's always ways to figure out things that work for you, and it's usually by substituting or eliminating things from the diet, and and their lifestyle makes a huge difference as well. So there's a lot of things,
Yeah.
not just diet for sure.
It's true. I mean, I was talking with a friend of mine who's a functional medicine doctor just yesterday about people get in, I'm guilty of it, kind of obsessing over food, and then not paying attention to the other stuff. Like she follows Jack Cruz too. And she's like, people, their bodies can't hold a charge. She's like, why do you think some people can go out there and eat all the carbs and eat all the crap, but be really healthy? They can go smoke cigarettes and they'll never get cancer because their body can hold a charge. They're maybe doing cold therapy. They're out in the sun. They're strengthening their mitochondria is really, really strong. So I think we get so food obsessed that we don't take a look at environment, stress levels, you know.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna tell you this. I was in Guatemala a month ago, maybe. And we were walking everywhere. We were outside all the time, relaxed, always in the sun, barefoot, and I felt freaking amazing.
Mm,
And I even had some cheese and it didn't bother me. And I'm
wow.
like, this is so weird. I'm like, is it because the cheese is different here, or is it because I'm outside, walking barefoot, and I wasn't working out or doing anything crazy, just walking. And when I got back, it was a week when I was gone, and I lost like almost 10 pounds. I'm like, I didn't think I had weight to lose, but I'm like, oh my God, like my clothes are fitting looser. So I'm like, definitely there's a link to, human body being connected to the earth.
Mhm.
And we know that we absorb electrons from the earth. We absorb photons from the sun, and it's definitely healing. So I do make sure that, living here in Arizona, when it's nice outside, when I have time, and that's another issue, just having the time,
Yeah,
go outside and just sit out in the sun, expose your stomach to the sun, because sun does have healing properties for the gut as well. So yeah, there's just so many different components of everything. It's not just food, it's everything. And
yeah,
we are so disconnected from, how our ancestors used to live, we're so disconnected from earth. And it's just like, it's crazy world, but we have to we have to somehow find ways to, to kind of mimic that, either through, like, the red light therapy, the
yeah.
cold exposure, all that stuff. It is helpful for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And one part of your story you haven't talked about is the flesh-eating bacteria that you had, and that health scare. That
Oh
was
yeah.
the first pictures of your account that I saw when I started following you. Like, I guess it was about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that so essentially that happened, I believe it happened because I wasn't following a plant-based diet at that time. Well, it was ketogenic, mostly plant-based.
Mhm.
So sometimes I would have like can of sardines like in a week when I did the keto diet. And I believe it was because I was very low in amino acids. That's why the infection developed. But it was just a whole crazy story when I was visiting my family in Arizona. I lived in Chicago at that time, and we went for a hike. And we came back from a hike, and I noticed this like little pimple, like underneath my belly button. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then a few hours later, we went for a walk or did something. We came back again. I'm like, oh, something's hurting. And then that thing grew to like giant size. By the time I was flying out back home, that thing was so big, it almost looked like I was pregnant, or like I had a little ball, like baseball ball, like in my, like
Oh my
in front
gosh.
of, yeah. It was just weird and so painful. I couldn't step on my foot. And then it just escalated super quickly. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was coming up my ribs. And then I went to ER. Doctors were super like they had no idea what that was, because it literally looked like I had a snake wrapped like from my abdomen going up my rib. It was just like all that pus collecting underneath my skin. And they didn't know what's going on. They flew in a few doctors that were like specialists in infections. And then after all this craziness, they finally figured out it was necrotizing fasciitis. I went through 3 surgeries to clean this up, and ended up with those scars that you can see on Instagram. And many people think that I was fighting a bear or fighting a tiger for my meat, but no, that's not what happened. It sounds more fun, but yeah, I was just basically in a hospital trying to fight this infection. And By the time they figure out what it was, they finally found the right antibiotics that would work, and they started injecting me with those. And afterwards, unfortunately, my gut was just trashed from
Sure.
all the antibiotics. I had basically like 4 different antibiotics going through IVs at the same time, because when they didn't know what it was, they were just hoping that something would work. And for those people who don't know what necrotizing fasciitis, is basically a bacteria that eats your flesh. So you have to, like, they had to cut out bunch of muscle mass from my abdomen and just to clear it out. And thankfully it didn't go through the ribs. It was pretty close to go through my lungs, but that didn't happen. So unfortunately for all these cows that I'm eating right now, otherwise they'd be safe. But yeah, it afterwards I kind of went back to vegan diet, thinking I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna fix my gut. I met this girl that was super into veganism, and I read the Medical Medium. I don't know if you're familiar with
Okay.
that, but all the celery juice, that's the, Medical Medium is the, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I read that and I'm like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. So
Yeah.
then I figured, well, I'm gonna instead of doing like the keto version of it, I'm just gonna do the high carb, like starchy carbs to feed the gut bacteria and all that stuff. And so I started doing that. Maybe like 2 weeks later, I'm noticing that I'm like binging again. And even though I'm not purging, I'm having those thoughts again. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going back to where I used to be. And I got really scared. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to go back to this again. And so then somehow I found carnivore diet. Somebody on Instagram, I think, posted about it. And I'm like, this dude is crazy. He's going to get cancer. Like, I'm like, this is crazy. And he was doing ketogenic diet prior to that. And then I found a podcast with Dr. Sean Baker on Ryan Muncie's podcast, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, Ryan Muncie. And I listened to him. I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. I'm like, I'm going to give this a try. I'm like, I have nothing else to lose. This is, my gut is suffering. I was in so much pain. I couldn't eat anything at that point. I couldn't even drink a glass of water. I had like this burn on top of my gut. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. Ever since then, I've been carnivore, and, it started as a 30-day experiment to see what's going to happen.
Yep.
And then, after 2 weeks, it was going pretty well for me from the beginning. But after 2 weeks, I think it was like day 13, I just hit this wall when I had zero energy. And I would literally come back from work. I wouldn't even take my clothes off. I would just go straight to bed. I had zero energy to do anything whatsoever. And I'm like, the next day, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then somehow I was just thinking to myself, I'm getting all these benefits from this. Let's just like wait another day and see what happens. I waited another day. I woke up and all of a sudden, like, somebody flipped the switch and my energy was back. Like, I had this clear mind and I could do everything. Like, I felt so much better. And now that I think about that time, like, if I gave up that day when it got really hard, like, I would never, get to where I am right now. So sometimes it gets really hard and sometimes it's hard to push through. And I know for many people it is. And when they get to that point, they just give up. But sometimes you just have to push a little bit harder and, it might be worth it.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people that started and said, we're just going to do 30 days. And then here we are, like,
yeah, 10 years later.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's what seems to happen. It's so common, and getting through the adaptation period can definitely be tricky and stressful for the body. So I, try to put information out there for people going through that. But that's why I think people should give it at least 30 days, because sometimes you do feel worse before you feel better, before you start getting those benefits.
Right. And then another thing like I get approached about a lot is weight gain. Like first when I started gaining weight on carnivore diet. And I went through after that vegan experiment that I did, like right before that, I felt like I was binging on meat, but then I'm like, you know what, like if that's what my body needs, I'm fine with that, and then I got to a point when I would take another bite of meat. I'm like, I can't eat anymore, and I was never the type of person who could just eat a small steak and be fine with it. I could eat probably half a cow and maybe then I'll be fine with it,
Yeah.
but I never had that signal in my brain where like, stop eating, you had enough. I could just go through many pounds of food and not get that, so for me, after a while, when I did go through a period of eating a lot, I got to a point where my body was just finally getting that signal, like your body is nourished, you've had enough, you don't need to eat anymore. And that's when I started eating normal portions or whatever my body needed, and the weight started just coming off on its own. So that's another thing, there's many women who go on carnivore diet hoping to lose weight, and they come from history of constant dieting. So that's another thing, like you first have to nourish your body.
Mm-hmm.
Once your body is nourished, then it's able to burn off the excess fat or whatever needs to happen, so
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had that experience also, and it's kind of scary to go through that, to have that a little bit of weight gain. It really can trigger you emotionally, but something inside of me was like, I just got to keep going with this because there's so many other benefits I've gotten, the depression and anxiety, the gut, the all the bloating and GI distress. Like I could go to yoga and not be worried that something might happen. I might have to run out of class, like, oh my God.
yeah.
Besides being hangry and like pissed off at the yoga teacher, because I can
Oh,
absolutely relate to that 100%. I was always worried that like we were going to do a twist or something, and then like all those greens that I ate were going to end up like causing the room to have to freaking evacuate. It was like a real, it was like a real fear, you know?
I know. For
So,
me, it was the worst when like the room would get very quiet and all you could hear was my God. Oh my God, that was
oh
like
yeah.
the worst thing ever, and it was so loud. So yeah, none of that now. And even though I stopped practicing yoga, I do feel so much better mentally. But yeah, so many benefits from it.
Yeah, and as a teacher, like I teach, I've probably taught thousands of people at this point. Everybody farts in yoga, you guys, like just FYI, and everyone thinks it's like the most embarrassing, worst thing in the world, but it probably happens like a couple times a week. And I'm like, it's, but if you go
You're
carnivore,
probably like, oh, they're vegan, probably, right?
exactly. It's like your shoulder hurts and you farted. Okay, maybe you should eat some steak. But I don't force that. I don't even tell most of my students don't even know I have this channel. Like I don't even put it out there for them. I just have it here as like a resource in case, people are curious about why I'm not vegan anymore. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, that it's crazy. Going back to the original thing, how did you kind of navigate the weight gain like that? Did it emotionally trigger you at all, or were you just like, I just got to do this?
It did. Like I did struggle with that because, like even with the whole eating disorder and dealing with like body dysmorphia, you know, for me it was really hard. Like that part was probably the hardest, and I had to convince myself that, this is good for my body. Like I need to heal my body. And I think I was at a point when I was just so tired of being tired and, and weak, that I was just like, you know what, whatever happens, like I need to do this, and it helped me with so many issues like regarding gut, like I was thinking that I wouldn't be even able to drink water. And then if I can eat a nice steak and feel amazing after it, I'm gonna stick with that. So yeah, it was hard. I mean, I tried meditating on it. I tried doing so many different things, to like change my mind, and but essentially it just came down that to the fact that what, everything else is healing. Um, the weight is gonna resolve. Like I just decided that it's just gonna happen, and it did. So yeah.
That's good. And you've done so many different carnivore kind of experiments within the diet. You did like a month of raw, a month of cooked. You've done all kinds of things. So I guess after a couple years now, do you feel like you're still fine tuning, or do you think you've kind of figured out what works best for you right now? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, with the raw experiment, I was hearing people eat only raw meat, and they were saying that they feel so amazing. They have even better energy. For me, that was not the case.
Mhm.
I still basically hate lamb because of that experiment. When I tried eating raw lamb, that was like I still struggle with lamb because of that. But
Oh,
anyway, it
wow.
didn't. Yeah, just the taste, the smell. Yeah. Um, but I didn't experience any of the, like healing or more energy or any of that. Like, yeah, maybe my digestion was a little bit better. Um, but when I did my labs, like there was nothing, no improvement in my lab work. And again, like I'm not necessarily like focusing on blood work, but I just like to compare to what it was. And then if I change something, is anything improving, and how am I feeling? Is it relating to how am I feeling? And there was really no change for me. And then there was another experiment I did with eating all grass-fed meat, and then eating just all grain-fed from Costco and testing the omega-3s. And there were differences. But in terms of how I felt no different, to be honest. There were slight differences between grass-fed and grain-fed. But again, I haven't felt anything different. So right now, I basically feel the best when I I live off of New York strips. I know everybody loves ribeyes, but
Yeah.
I love my I love my New York strip. And one of the reasons why I like it is because if I don't feel like eating a lot of fat, I can always cut it off, from the side. If I do feel like eating more fat, then it always has plenty of fat on the side. So I just leave it on there and enjoy that. I did also play around with higher fat, lower protein, higher protein, lower fat. And at first I thought it did improve my digestion when I went higher fat, but um, it maybe lasted for like a week, and then I went back to like feeling pretty much the same, and I experimented with that for like 30 days. So um, I noticed a little bit higher inflammation, and from the tests that I've done, my inflammation markers, the CRP was a little bit higher on higher fat. So I went back just to eating, the way I was always eating, not measuring anything, just basically New York strips like 2 times a day, and that works for me pretty well. And that might change, like our
Yeah.
bodies change all the time, and we'll see what happens in the future. But right now, it's just I'm not really focusing on any ratio. I'm just
Yeah.
like trying to enjoy um, what I'm eating. And like I said, my pick is New York strip.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone's going to have their own experience, and that's why I keep on bringing people onto the channel and interviewing them, because everyone is different and they're going to respond differently. Some people swear by high fat. I'm actually doing it right now and I'm loving it. But then some people swear by like the higher protein and love it. So I just always want to put the message out to people who are interested that you just kind of have to experiment for yourself and find what works best for you, and not get stuck in like it has to be a certain way.
Yeah, and you know, there's another thing, the whole nose to tail, like do you have to eat organ meats or do you not? You know, I personally enjoy some organ meats in my diet. Like I don't make it a point where I have to eat it every single day. It's essentially like when I almost crave it, sometimes I crave like chicken liver, I'll have that or something else, you know, I'll have it, but I'm not like, oh, I have to have something, some organ meat every single day, you know? So it's like, again, is it necessary? I don't know. Like, I don't think anybody knows. There's a bunch of argument for it. There's some argument against it. So I would say, like what you said, you know, you have to experiment and see. Like, if it makes you feel better, you know, do that. If you can't handle organ meats, there's so many supplements now that are just desiccated, not desiccated, but a dehydrated liver or other organs or complex of different organs. You can just, you know, do that.
Yeah, I think that's really good information. And like I said, we're just still learning so much about what's going to be optimal for people when they do more of a, that carbohydrate metabolism is pretty well studied. And we've got the RDAs and we've got the lab values, and they're mostly based on the carbohydrate metabolism. So, what we know really about this more of a fat based metabolism is not a lot. We're seeing a lot, and we've got stories, and we've got all these health benefits that we're all seeing. But like I said, the data is not solid,
Exactly, yeah. Well, hopefully now with the huge, you know, carnivore and keto community, there's going to be more studies done, and there are studies, you know, popping up and, you know, confirming that, oh, you know, carnivore diet is or meat is actually not bad for you. It's the other things that you eat with the meat, you know, and
Yeah.
so hopefully there's going to be more of that, and we can prove that, you know, like meat is actually a superfood. It's not goji berries, it's not
Right.
spirulina. Yeah,
Right.
it's a good steak that's gonna heal your body and makes you strong.
Definitely. Well, we got the pleasure of meeting at White Oak Cella this past December, which is really awesome. And you brought and I got to try some of the carnivore snacks, which I think they're going to be hitting the market. Hopefully, I know you're working on that, but tell everyone a little bit about carnivore snacks, which, by the way, you guys, they're absolutely delicious.
Thank you for that. Yes, carnivore snacks are my baby, my project, I guess, or my redemption from doing all the damage I've done when I was vegan. So we are launching April 1st, our Kickstarter. And if you guys go to at carnivore.snacks on Instagram, there's a link in there. You can subscribe through there, enter email and the phone number. The people who enter the phone number, they'll get the notification first where we're actually gonna launch it so they can go and purchase. And what carnivore snacks are is basically, I don't want to say beef jerky because it's not really beef jerky. It's more like beef chip, and we're going to have different cuts. We have pork loin, we have eye round, and ribeye. And we are really focusing on regenerative agriculture. That's where we partner with White Oak pastures to source our meat from. And then the salt that we're using is Redmond real salt. So we're really focusing on top best ingredients out there you can get. And we're hoping it actually goes well. Like the whole project's been pretty stressful to say the least. But yeah, we're hoping it goes well on April 1st. Everything is coming together pretty good. So yeah, and thank you for being such a huge supporter and helping us with everything. And we definitely appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure. I mean, it's a good product, and I feel like for me especially, I go to these yoga retreats and like meditation retreats, and I'm grateful to have something that I can actually bring with me now. Um, because all these places are vegetarian and vegan right now. Maybe I'll change that at some point. Maybe I'll start leading some things down the road. But
That's a great idea.
for a yoga retreat,
Yeah.
y'all let me know what you want to do.
Hey, I'll be down for that. Definitely.
Yeah,
I'm going back to Guatemala, and unfortunately, I'm going to be at a very vegan place. So I'm hoping that somehow I know I'm the maker of carnivore snacks, and everybody thinks that I have just like a huge stash of carnivore snacks somewhere, but I don't. So hopefully by that time I'll be able to get some myself and survive that vegan place. But
Yeah.
yeah, but
Amazing.
yoga carnivore retreat, that would be really awesome. Maybe
Yeah.
in Bali. I
Oh my
would
gosh.
join you. I would join you.
I think it'd be amazing. Yeah. I'm not going to any more vegetarian retreats if I can help it. I mean,
Yeah.
I basically did an egg fast the whole time I was in
Oh,
Bali on my retreat because I was like, I can't eat the stuff that you're serving. Can you make me some eggs? And they were like, sure, we can make you some eggs. There are chickens like everywhere, running around the property. Yeah, we can make you eggs. So I just ate eggs for 7 days straight and had some beef jerky in my room and
perfect.
got to make do because you can't be sitting
Yeah.
in meditation with a distended belly and uncomfortable, like you just don't
Yeah.
want that.
And
So,
yeah, and pretty much gas just coming out of your ears.
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Well, this
thank
has
you so
been so
much.
awesome. Yeah. And if people want to find you, I'm going to put links to all these things below, but where can people find you and more? I think you mentioned carnivore snacks. Just let everybody know.
Yes, so people can either, for carnivore snacks, they can either go to carnivore snacks, and that's snacks with an X on the end, .com. They can follow carnivore snacks on Instagram, carnivore that snacks with an X. My personal account is biohacking.chick on Instagram. And that's pretty much like all I have time for, to be on Instagram. Like I'm not on any other social media. I know that Facebook is still a thing, but I'm not really much on there. Maybe one of those days. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Well, I'll be sure to put all those links below. And this has been such a great conversation. I know that it's going to help a lot of people. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing and being so open and honest.
Thank you so much. It was fun, and hopefully I'll see you this year at
Yeah, I'm going to Oakchella. I'm going to teach yoga again.
maybe
Both
this
days.
time I'll actually get to do it, because last time it wasn't.
So busy. I
Yeah.
know Sarah and Ashley were like, sorry, we didn't get to come. I'm like, it's fine. I still had a good group, which was surprising for like a carnivore gathering. I had 12 people both days, which I was like, okay, that's pretty cool that people want to do yoga at this carnivore meetup, you know?
Yeah, hopefully I'll make it this year. So
Yeah,
I'll see
I'll
I'll see you again.
be there. Awesome. Well, thanks again.